Hello and welcome to the Sustainability First live event. Thank you for joining this evening. We have been running art and essay prizes, exploring how to come from the current corona crisis towards a more sustainable future. Tonight, we will be showcasing shortlisted artworks and essays with reflections from the judges. We're also going to be sharing insights, ideas and recommendations from across the art and essay prizes, which we're featuring in a virtual book. And that will be released in about 2 weeks' time. And we're going to excitingly announce the prize winners. So the question that we asked is, how do we build from the current corona crisis towards a more sustainable future? For the essays, we allowed the entrants to look at 3 different aspects: cultural, behavioural and societal change, government policy, regulatory and institutional change, and business leadership, governance and practice. So just to give you some background in terms of what we see as sustainability, we're looking at balancing the needs of future and current generations, and also looking at 3 aspects: environmental, social and economic sustainability. So yeah, we had an absolutely amazing response to these open calls, and we want to say a huge thank you to everybody that submitted work to the project. We had over 1,100 artworks and over 100 essays, and it's been a pleasure to see your works and your ideas for change. It's been a really difficult process to shortlist these prizes, and we've had 3 rounds of shortlisting for both competitions. The essays were assessed completely anonymously by the judges, and for the artworks, which are more distinctive, we've ensured that anyone that knew the artist was declared it and then was not involved in assessing that particular work. For those of you that weren't shortlisted, we really want to say, please don't feel it's a reflection of your work, as there have been some fantastic entries. And we know that this, particularly for the artworks, was quite a difficult brief. And the judges really wanted in their selected shortlist to include works that spoke both to the current corona crisis and long-term sustainability. So many of the works that weren't shortlisted covered one aspect really well, but not both. So yeah, we are hoping to share some of the wider artworks online. Tonight, after this event, we will be putting the shortlisted works up, and then later in a couple of weeks' time, we will be putting some of the wider works up. For the essay shortlist, judges were looking for radical ideas for action. So there were many really interesting, descriptive and focused works on the, beyond the shortlist. And we're bringing the insights from those works into the virtual book. So we're going to be citing those works in the book. So I really want to say tonight we are joined by some of the shortlisted essay writers and artists, and I want to say congratulations to them. Just even, you know, to get on the shortlist has been amazing, because you've really undergone some tough scrutiny by our judges, and our judges are going to be here tonight to talk about how they've made the selection, and we're really excited to share your works. This is actually part of a wider project with Sustainability First to engage students, artists and creative thinkers in policy discussions on climate change and social justice to develop a more hopeful vision for the future. So there will be further opportunities to work with us, and for example, we've got some artist residencies. We've got 2 at the moment. This image is from SSE Renewables, and they're hosting a residency in Perth, and we've also got one in London with UK Power Networks, but we're hoping to have some more artist residency opportunities coming up over the year ahead. I am joined this evening by Lord Deben. Lord Deben, if you could get ready to join. He is the chair of the committee on, oh, it's Deben, sorry, I got it wrong. He is the chair of the committee on climate change, and he's also chaired the essay judging panel. He's kindly going to open with some thoughts on what we need to do, what we need to focus on as we emerge from the corona crisis, and why initiatives such as this are important to engage new voices in discussions on sustainability now and in the future. Lord Deben, please can you join us if you're there?
Well, I am, and very pleased to be here. and congratulations on the very large number of people who have taken part in this whole operation, both the artists and the essayists. I've enjoyed very much being part of the judging panel, and lots of ideas have come through the essays and are certainly represented in the artwork. And I suppose I just want to start by saying sustainability is about being here in 100 years' time and well beyond it. That sustainability is fundamentally about working the way in which we can operate in the world so as to give a future for our children and our grandchildren, and indeed, frankly, for ourselves. People talk as if these changes, and climate change in particular, are all going to be something in the future. Of course, they're not. These are changes which are taking place now and affecting us now. There's a very good summing up of climate change, which is the words of the Pope in his encyclical Laudato Si, when he said climate change is the symptom of what we've done to the world. And I think we have to start there to accept the fact that we have treated the world as if it were there for our ravishing, that we really didn't have to think about the future, that there were resources which were bottomless, continuous, and that we never had to think about tomorrow. And what we've done, of course, is to make the world less productive. We have reduced our biodiversity, and we have increasingly damaged the things that keep this planet in a state to enable us and the whole of the animal and vegetable kingdom to live. So the first thing that matters is how do we repair the damage that we've done? And we have to do that by finding ways of enabling people to live, but to live in a way which contributes to the future rather than taking away from the future. So that's why the first thing we have to do is to reduce our carbon footprint to nothing. We need actually probably to take some of that carbon back out of the atmosphere. Second thing we have to do is to learn to live within our resources. Of course, we need to grow, but we've got to define growth in a different way. Growth is not just getting more and more. Growth is much closer to cultural and personal and intellectual furtherance. We mustn't try to be static. Human beings can't be static. They have to change, they have to grow. But they must grow not at the expense of others or the expense of the planet. So thirdly, we have to do this in a way which is just. We have to make those changes in a way where the cost falls upon those most able to pay it. And that means, of course, in a country like Britain, realizing that we have benefited over the years from the pollution that has been created. Much of our richness comes from that. Therefore, we have to pay a much bigger part of the cost. We cannot expect those countries that haven't benefited to pay for the change from dirty growth to clean growth. That's a price we have to pay. And Britain has a particular reason for doing that, because we started the Industrial Revolution. In a sense, we were the originator of that. And if you take the companies that are quoted on the London Stock Exchange, we have a huge portion of those who are still benefiting from that. So we have a leadership role to play. That's why I'm very pleased that we're going to chair the meeting of COP26 now next year. And I hope that between now and then we will show the leadership which we certainly ought to show, and which we have begun to show, both in the creation of the Climate Change Act and the Climate Change Committee, which I am honoured to chair. But if we're going to do that, we all have to do it together. And why I have been so excited by what you're trying to do is that you have brought in so many people, so many interested people to make their contribution for the new voices that we need. Well, this is not something just for government, just for business, just for the finance houses. This is something for all of us. And that contribution of all of us is very well represented by the artworks and the essays that we have. So I'm looking forward to this occasion, and thank you very much for allowing me to set the scene.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for your introduction. That was fantastic and really does set the scene for the changes that we need to see and how we can bring in these new voices. And now, hopefully, oh, sorry, I forgot to put your slide up. There we go. Now I can start to share some of the shortlisted works. So I'm going to share half of the artworks and then half of the essays, half of the artworks, half of the essays. And these works are not in any particular order, but what we've done is to group them thematically. And this first set of artworks, it deals with issues of air quality and pollution. So, Estel's Mask of Moss simply and poetically evokes the importance of nature for human health. Eleanor reuses recycled air pollution masks in place of flowers in traditional Vietnamese funeral wreaths to raise awareness of deaths from air pollution. This work has taken on a new resonance in the current corona crisis. Jasmine creates sculptures from a material that absorbs nitrogen dioxide from the atmosphere. Her image of the inhaler is a reminder of those vulnerable to the virus and to air pollution. Stephen's data visualization gives a glimpse of the wilding of London, with lighter pixels showing lower levels of air pollution in March 2020 compared to March 2019. Adam has assigned musical values to air quality data to depict the rising and falling pollution over London during the coronavirus lockdown. I'm going to play you a little sample and then the full video is on our website. Sarah displays found objects exchanged by post with children and their families from around the world, recording their diverse personal experiences of air quality in their local environment. Liz creates paintings from compostable food bag material, sewn together, floating like parachute silk and breathing in the wind. Maria creates a footprint-shaped light installation of plastic collected from the Thames. And William recorded his daily encounters with nature during lockdown, including this illegal rubbish dump, questioning human relationships with the environment. And Georgia has created a virtual reality environment, drawing attention to the plastic pollution in our oceans. And again, the full video will be available online. So, I'm now going to take you to Tab and Joe, who hopefully will be joining. They have been involved in judging the Art Prize. Tab has a kind of dual life because he is both an art critic for The Londonist and he also works in energy in British Gas. So he's sort of like me, he sort of straddles two different worlds. Tab, are you there?
I am here.
Oh, great. I wondered if you could share some reflections on the works that we've just seen.
Yes, of course. Thank you. It was great seeing all these works. I remember one of the things that everyone's going to remember from lockdown, for those who were able to, was your daily piece of exercise. And you wandered out and it was great to go outside, but also just the air felt fresher. And I don't know whether that was from just being locked in or from the fewer cars on the road. And I think that really resonated with a lot of the works, especially Eleanor Shipman's funeral wreaths marking the deaths from air pollution in Vietnam, especially with Maria's work about the detritus found in the River Thames and the oceans. And Georgia Tucker was decided, well, she's not just going to bring representations of pollution to us, she's going to take us to it as we go into a VR environment when we're immersed in kind of the pollution that's found in our oceans, on the seabeds and floating in the water. And it felt very poetic to me, because technology, as Lord Deben mentioned, has been the cause of some of the pollution that we've seen in environmental destruction in the world, but it can also be part of the solution to addressing that and help us build back better. So it's great to see it being represented here with the latest technology in the shortlist. And it made our job very hard, which is a sign of how great the selection was. You know, you always want to know as a judging panel, it was hard work, because that meant you had a good, strong selection of candidates. So I'm just going to wish congratulations to everyone who entered and was shortlisted, and now hand over to Jo.
Oh, thank you very much. Jo, hey, are you there?
Yeah, hi Claire, thanks Tab. And congratulations also to everybody. I, again, particularly enjoyed the process and did also find it very difficult. I was looking for work that encompassed both a vision of where we are and where we want to go in the future. And in the works, we saw such amazing things. We saw stillness and chaos. We saw hope and despair. We saw strength and fragility. And collectively, together, all of the pieces really gave me that strong sense of us all turning together towards a new future. So thank you for that experience. The few pieces of work that I'd like to highlight: Adam Sadiq's COVID London, an audio representation of changing pollutions in London. It was great to see a new data angle being brought to that. I really enjoyed the sort of vibrant and energetic take on the topic. Jasmine's Famine, as a parent of children that use inhalers, to be able to combine that sense of vulnerability, but also bring it together with a practical solution for combating climate change, that was great. And in Estelle's piece, Breathe, it was so graceful as a composition, but such a thoughtful combination of the themes of COVID and air pollution. It really stood out for me as a piece. So thank you all. It was a hard job, and congratulations all for tonight. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. That's been really great to hear how you found the shortlist and how you selected the work. So thank you so much. Right, I'm just going to now share. Oop, if I can get it up. Right, so now we're going to look at some of the essay prizes. So obviously it's a little bit more tricky to share the essay prize shortlist, because these are all 2,500 word essays. They will be available on our website, so we're going to be putting those up after the event tonight. But what we did instead was to invite the finalists to a call, and they each tape recorded their sort of very brief pitch on what their essay is about. So I'm going to play those for you now. Just to warn you, obviously we're doing our best with technology in this time. Everybody's trying new things. And we did have to tape this from Zoom, and then now we're putting it in a presentation. So for some reason, the lip sync has gone off a little bit. So I'm very sorry for that. But hopefully you can bear with us and hear what the entrants have to say.
Hi, my name is James Poston, and my essay looked across all three categories of government, business, and civil society. For government, I recommended number one, preventing future pandemics, because we wouldn't be able to handle a second one. Focus recovery packages around green growth and sustainability, and take a larger leadership role in building towards a more sustainable future. For business, number one was reducing the unnecessary travel. Number two was shifting to a distributed workforce model to also address regional inequalities. And number three, focus on a long-term value over short-term investment vision. Finally, in civil society, the first basic step was increasing mental health and well-being through community-driven efforts to build a more resilient populace. Number two was continuing those good habits that many people have built throughout lockdown. And finally, increasing civic participation to hold regional and national governments to account.
Hi, my name is Annalie Tostar. I work for the Better Buildings Partnership, which focuses on improving the sustainability of commercial buildings in the UK. My essay touches on the tax and legislative changes that I feel are necessary for building a more sustainable, more equitable world. One piece of this is a high marginal tax rate, which would tax anything above £5 million a year at a rate of 90%. This would help pay for transitioning the energy grid, particularly with the retrofit of homes. So heating buildings currently makes up about 30 to 40% of the UK's greenhouse gas emissions. And the majority of these buildings use gas boilers. So retrofitting is really important. The second incentive includes giving small businesses a tax credit to transition to a circular economy model. And then lastly, I think it's incredibly important, especially in light of everything going on with recent events, to have representational task forces to ensure that any widespread decisions, whether that's legislation, tax, or otherwise, benefit all people, and that our society can be one that we all benefit from.
Hi, my name is Parth Devalia, and I'm an undergraduate student at the University of Warwick. With my essay, I wanted to illustrate that the coronavirus crisis is an opportunity to build off of in moving towards a sustainable future, rather than a limitation. First, establishing that crises in history have acted as catalysts for previous trends, giving the example of the NHS, we moved to look at the previous trends and opportunities from the crisis in the three key areas of society: communities, government, and business. We discuss ideas such as wealth taxes, investor action, and other areas in public utilities. However, the key focus is on the desire for change that will allow us to leverage this opportunity.
Hi, my name is Dylan, and I'm an undergraduate philosophy student. My essay is about the idea that what we can take from the corona crisis is to overcome worldwide issues that require cooperation, compassion, and empathy. It's not enough to just communicate the facts. The sustainability problem is not just a mechanical or a technical one. To persuade people to change their habits in their day-to-day lives, the little things that amount to everything, one must appeal to and evaluate what we consider to be important: our values, the things that matter to us, the things that makes the will to action possible.
Hi, my name is James Poston, and my...
Great, thank you. Oh, they were so great to have those little summaries of the essays. Phil Barton, I think you're now joining us. So Phil is the chair of Sustainability First, and also Andy will be joining as well. So if you could both get ready. And Phil, are you there?
I am here, and I was involved in judging both prizes, which was a particular privilege, and it's just been so exciting to see the range of ideas and themes and commitment that has come out of this whole process. James Poston's essay was wide-ranging, and we were particularly impressed in the way he incorporated a high degree of primary research. Himself went out and talked to people, asked their views, and fed that into his essay. And as he said, he presented a series of ideas for change, importantly building on where we are now, promoting green growth, encouraging businesses and governments to make paradigm shifts, which I think is something that is definitely needed, and looking to build on the lower consumption and communal kindness of the lockdown to build back better. Annalie Tosta wrote a really insightful essay around the theme of inclusivity and fairness in order to build better, with the three big ideas that she's mentioned. In particularly using taxation on higher wealth and higher income in order to incentivize and support the transition that we need to make in terms of retrofitting and developing new technologies. And then really importantly, engaging the widest possible range of interests into policy and regulation across the board. And of course, with the recent Black Lives Matter surge, which has come up during this pandemic, that really emphasizes to all of us the need to increase the inclusivity if we're to achieve real sustainability.
Oh, thank you very much, Bill. And Andy, are you there? Could you
I am here, yeah. Hello, hi,
Oh,
Claire.
Andy. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'd just like to say that I thought it's a really difficult question. You know, it's kind of how do you sort of change a society that is, or a global society that seems to have reached a consensus about a free market and making money that is rushing forward. And how do you answer those questions in 2,500 words? You know, we deal with these discussions and conversations every day. So I thought it was a really difficult question to answer. And I thought all the essays I read did exceptionally well in sort of distilling and clarifying the ideas. I thought Parth's essay, well, what I liked about that, and I think what we all liked about it, was the way he managed to intertwine and make the point that these three pillars of society, as he called them, the sort of government, the civil society and business are intertwined, and they're not really separate entities. So they have to be, the sort of actions have to involve each other. So he had some great ideas, such as putting sustainability reps onto sort of boards of companies, and sort of engaging with the social contract that we have, you know, decoupling from the market. And I think as well, he sort of identified that change does come very rapidly in times of crisis, but that change comes from ideas that have been sort of bubbling away for 20, 30, 40 years. So I thought he did a really good job in sort of distilling that idea. Dylan's essay, I think, was a big favorite of all the judges, because you know, it's interesting to see he's a philosophy student, because it was a very philosophical essay that sort of didn't really get into the economics like many of the others did, but just talked about sort of how we as individuals, how do we sort of make ourselves count as individuals, and how do we recognize that what we do is important. And he sort of colored that with some great sort of stories and metaphors. And it sort of had this sort of almost kind of, I felt sort of ancient Greek sort of sit down and I'll tell you a story kind of parable attitude to it at some points. And it comes down to sort of self-reflection and sort of understanding who we are as people, and that human problems can be solved by humans. So I think that was a great essay because of its sort of philosophical sort of bent.
Oh, thank you very much for your feedback. It's really great to hear how you found the essays. Brilliant. And so now I'm going to share the second set of artwork images. So these images consider the experience of lockdown, our connection to the home and garden, to nature and with each other. Kathy's collage expresses the isolation, fear and distancing we've all been living with as a result of the pandemic, and how nurturing our relationship with nature may give hope from despair. Sam seeks to draw attention to the issues we do not notice, arguing that the overwhelming events of this year are a cascade of interconnected crises. Thier's carbon neutral construction is made from recycled bottles and earth to mimic the reusable shell of a hermit crab. Ratchner's tapestries bring the outside in, evoking the simple pleasures of a woodland walk. Rebecca considers how this strange period has enabled a focus on well-being, nurturing relationships and tending to the garden, appreciating local green spaces. Geraint captures the spirit of collective action, drawing volunteer litter pickers from a river in Cardiff. Jacob reminds us of the selfless sacrifice of those on the front line, depicting on leaves through a sustainable process an image of every NHS staff member and care worker who has lost their life during the pandemic. Rachel captures the momentary shadow imprint of her body on a cliff, embedded with soil, shell fragments and fossils, layered over millions of years. And Freya's sculptures explore the strangeness of existence without external stimulus, whilst being made from the stuff that comes in our homes, including free papers and cardboard delivery boxes. So I'm now going to be joined by Geraldine Cox and Jeremy Till. Jeremy chaired our art judging panel. Geraldine, are you there?
I'm here, Claire.
Oh, great. Hi, Geraldine.
Hi. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for these remarkable entries. And I think some of the judges have already said just how hard work it was to select winners and even to make the shortlist. It's been a really thought-provoking and stimulating process, and particularly for me to experience so many diverse visions, diverse and personal visions. And I spent an hour or two today reflecting on which were the ones that probably most caught my imagination and my heart. And I think they were the ones that most embodied personal and tender observance of nature, and the recognition of our inseparableness with nature. And it seemed like really important thought patterns to nurture if we are to thrive in the years ahead. And so I'd just like to mention a few examples that struck me as falling into that kind of mode. And I'm thinking of Liz Elton's portrayal of beauty as in something as everyday as her thrown away vegetables and flowers. Rachel Mellor's carefully framed, though fleeting shadow of herself on a sun-baked ancient rock. And Rachna Garodia's delicate weaving of nature, which evokes time and also evokes nature itself. And lastly, for me, Rebecca Harper's romantic painting of her and her partner, green-handed in the allotment before the setting sun. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your insights. That's really wonderful. And I think that message about our connection to nature has really come through in both the artworks and the essays. Jeremy, are you there?
I hope so.
Great.
I'm here in my body. I'm not sure if they're on the screen. Okay. So maybe I should just talk a bit about the judging process, because I was chair of the judges. And although the judges all say it was difficult, I'd just like to thank them for not making my life difficult as chair of judges, because sometimes you have to, it's like kind of separating teenagers, and it wasn't like that at all. So I'm very grateful to all the judges. Each of the judges, of course, including me, had our own personal favourites, and we each were allowed to advocate and shout up for our favourites. But in the end, we came up with a pretty consensual shortlist. And actually looking at the shortlist again, I'm amazed by the strength of it. You know, there's not a dud on it. And I think that that is a testament to the amazing work that the artists, all the artists who've contributed to this project have put into it, but also to the strength of the final 20. So that was great. I should also thank Claire and Amy and the rest of Sustainability First, because they did a fantastic job in organising the competition and making our lives much easier. I've done this before, and it can be a bit chaotic, even in a room, let alone virtually. And it was beautifully organised, and I think that actually made the whole process much fairer. So thanks also to Claire and the others at Sustainability First for making our lives easy. What I was most interested in is the role that art can play in these uncertain times. I am, of course, interested, as Geraldine and the others have talked about one's individual response to COVID and the climate crisis. But I think also there's something to do with the collective response of the creative community. And one of the most important things for me, particularly in relation to my students at St. Martin's, is that I think we have an incredibly important role to play in the imagination, anticipation, and projection of new futures. We are facing a crisis, and that crisis demands systemic change. And therefore, what we need are scenarios of living and gathering and behaving that we simply don't have at our fingertips at the moment. And I think that the creative sector and artists in particular have a really important role in that envisioning process of moving on from a depiction and representation of what it's like at the moment to actually thinking about what it's going to be like in the future. And some of the work which for me really did that was for me the stuff that resonated most, whether it's Grant's wonderful pictures of what happens when you have a community come together, whether it is whoops, I've lost my notes. That's not very good, Jeremy. Sam's, you only see one of Sam's works, but there's something about Sam's body of work which actually is really intelligent about looking at our relationship to these difficult moments. The brilliant imagery of terror, of that ant heap, which isn't an ant heap, sat in the mountains. Kathy's collages, which were both very personal, but I think also projective about new ways of which we might gather things together. And later on, I might say a few bits about some of the other projects. But thanks to everybody for contributing, to the judges for being so nice, and to Sustainably First for organising this whole thing.
Oh, thank you so much. That's really great. And we're so pleased to be able to do this project, that bringing artworks into a kind of an area that we're all used to working in. We've all been working kind of climate change, energy policy and that sort of field. And actually it's wonderful to now bring it together with sort of the art world and yeah, bring in some new voices in this area. So next we have got the next selection of essay prize entrants, and one of the entrants, Sergio, couldn't join for our pre-call, so we don't have a video from him, but we will talk about his work. And I will now play the videos.
Hi, my name is Alicia Bodding, and I'm currently a master's student at the London School of Economics. I've particularly emphasised the fact that there is a need for sustainability in the whole breadth of the term, not just environmental, but also social and economic. There is a clear need for collaboration and cohesive efforts between the three different groups, between societies, policymakers, and businesses. And I finished by saying that now is the time to act rapidly and boldly while we still have the chance.
Hi, my name is Manjot and I work for Networks Markets. And my essay looked at and concentrated on how the government intervention can help with the green entrepreneurship that is already in place at university infrastructures, and how it can help coordinate that between private companies and the public sector. And by doing this, you can have a multiplier effect where it can help renewable energy sector.
My name is Patrick Hinton. My essay offers two complementary perspectives on the problem. The first is a top-down approach led by government. Future stimulus can act as a catalyst for clean energy provisions, such as reducing labour market inefficiencies in favour of productive, sustainable jobs. Second is a population-centric model, which takes lessons from the pandemic to pivot community engagement to improving sustainability. The piece demonstrates that appeals to pure reason have struggled in the fight for climate awareness and behavioural change.
Hello, my name is Yash Dewan, and I'm a first-year undergraduate student at UCL. Now, my essay focuses on government policy and institutional change to highlight the ways in which nations can build a sustainable future from the coronavirus. Firstly, it discusses the need for a paradigm shift in outlook from prioritizing GDP growth to balancing economic activity under the donut economic model. Secondly, it emphasizes on harnessing the COVID-19 fiscal stimulus packages to make meaningful investments in sustainable urban infrastructure, renewable energy projects, and correcting the valuation of water. Complemented with improved social security nets, the expenditure will help humanity build a sustainable future while also tackling the current economic crisis. This spending is a one-time opportunity to pivot away from the gray rhino that is climate change and define the future of our planet. We must not waste it.
Oh, thank you very much to our Essay Prize shortlist. They are all on the line tonight, so thank you very much for joining us. And now we're going to hear from Rose and Paul. Rose, are you on the line? So Rose was one of our Essay Prize judges.
Hi, Claire. Yes, thank you. Hi, thank you, everyone. It was so interesting reading. I wasn't sure what to expect when I agreed to judge this, and I was just really impressed by the diversity of views and also the sort of upswell and sheer volume of ideas that people sort of came up with at such a challenging time, which really does give me hope. Also, I'd be really interested to hear from the authors about, you know, things have moved on since they wrote this a couple of months ago. Things are moving so quickly at the moment, so I'd be really interested to hear if people were thinking differently about their essays. But I just wanted to comment on two essays that resonated with me personally. So the first one, I really enjoyed your essay, Alicia. I really enjoyed the balance that you and the way you structured your essay around those three themes, and really looked at environmental, social and economic. It was a holistic approach, and it really allowed you to sort of present a sort of breadth of ideas, but also pull out the opportunities for collaboration and connection across those themes. And for me, I just found it really optimistic because it was practical, it felt possible, even though it was ambitious. I really enjoyed the discussion around culture and behaviour, especially because we know that lockdown has really disrupted or manifest in so many changes to our lives, from, you know, what we do in the garden, outside, cooking, and I really like the way that your essay really talked about the systemic as well as the individual effects of that. The other essay that I'd like to highlight was yours, Yash. A lot of the judges commented on this. We were familiar with the concept of donut economics, but we really liked the way that you sort of took that and developed it and built on it to really present a manifesto for change, a sort of framework for the fiscal response to COVID. So that was good. I really like the framing in your essay as COVID-19 as an environmental problem, and the sort of range of policy and institutional interventions went from illegal wildlife trade to construction industry. And lastly, I'd just like to say I was really impressed by the sort of case you put forward around using water as investment in water as part of the green recovery. And I'll hand over to Paul. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you. Paul, are you there?
Thank you, Claire. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to first start by echoing all the other judges' comments about what a pleasure it's been to be involved in this. I'm going to share a few reflections on three of the essays. So Patrick's first. Patrick begins his essay with a reflection on how unprepared we were for the impact of COVID-19. So he says, and I quote, "If someone had telephoned in January and described the situation in which we find ourselves, a chuckle and a swift hanging up would have followed." I think Patrick's right to point to our unpreparedness. There were warnings, we missed them, or we ignored them. Later in the essay, Patrick draws a parallel between COVID-19 and the climate emergency. I think he's right to do so. Global average temperatures rising. We must expect climate shocks in the future. Some of Patrick's proposed interventions not only respond to post-COVID recovery, but also help mitigate climate change. Supporting renewables, cutting subsidies to fossil fuels, investing in green infrastructure are just some of the examples that Patrick talked about. Galvanizing behavioural change was also in Patrick's crosshairs, and he drew attention to the influential role of social media, noting that cultural and social change is an essential part of our response. Patrick's essay was well written, it was compelling. Secondly, Manjot. Manjot brought forward a more focused series of interventions based on his own experience of being involved with KCL's Entrepreneurship Institute. The underpinning theory or thesis here is a familiar one to students of innovation. It's a Schumpeterian idea about technology, innovation, entrepreneurship driving change. It's well established. We can find evidence of it in the long waves of change, or techno-economic paradigms, as we call them, that go right back to the first industrial revolution. So Manjot anchors his essay around this concept of greenship, combining theories of change at the micro and macro level. He combines government interventions with academic entrepreneurship and private sector involvement through accelerator programs. It's a call for the triple helix to work on needs-led or problem-based challenges. Manjot's essay fizzes with enthusiasm and first-hand experience. In a very practical way, he taps into an important central driver of change. And thirdly, not here, couldn't make it tonight, but Sergio's essay also had much to commend it. The judges appreciated the multilateralism, the international focus, the systems perspective of the essay. Now isn't a time for finger pointing, nationalistic blame game. We need new models of international and multilateral cooperation. We mustn't lose sight of that global perspective. So Sergio brings together these ideas to suggest a pathway to a more equitable, just and sustainable future. He makes practical, well-evidenced recommendations.
Oh, thank you so much for those really thoughtful reflections. Let me get the screen back up. There we go. Thank you. And so we did get such fantastic responses to both the essay and the art prizes. And as I said, we will be sharing works beyond those shortlisted. And in particular, we've been putting together this virtual book, and we are taking insights from across all the essays, citing to the essay writers, because there were many smaller insights, you know, in the essays that or more focused ones. So there was particularly ones around dentistry or doctors that were very, very specific to a sector. And we've wanted to bring out those ideas into this book. Now, Amy is our research assistant. And Amy, I hope you're there. But Amy has done an absolutely fantastic job. Well done, Amy, of bringing these insights together and summarising them. Amy, I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the process and what you've learnt from it.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. So yeah, it's been my job and a pleasure actually to draw together some of the main themes and ideas emerging from the essays over the last few weeks, as well as pulling together some insights that we've gathered from a survey we've done and insights we've gathered from interviews with the judges, with industry experts and academics in the sector as well, to contribute to chapters in the virtual book that we'll be launching, and about how we deliver a sustainable future after coronavirus. So it's been a really insightful process, and I just wanted to say thank you to all the essay entrants on the line now and all of those who submitted essays, because actually we received over 100 from across the country, from Southampton to Strathclyde, and from engineers, from doctors, from dentists, from community relations specialists, people who are not so typically a part of our sector. And actually, this whole crowdsourcing practice and process speaks to the purpose of this project, which was really about drawing together insights, perspectives, and opinions from across the board, from outside of our sector, so that we can deliver a sustainable future, which I think is beneficial for everyone. So these are all thoughts and ideas that come out in the virtual book. And I'll just let Sharon go on and talk a little bit in more detail about some of these themes.
Great, thank you very much. And Sharon, are you there?
I'm here. Thanks very much, Claire, and thanks very much, Amy. The virtual book will be coming out in about 2 weeks' time. So if you'd like a copy, please do join our mailing list. There's a green button on our website where you can do that. And as Amy's explained, it brings together the themes that came up in the essays, but also in the artworks. So it's drawing on the insights and the visions of over 1,200 entries and the people who responded to our SurveyMonkey survey. So there's some fantastic ideas there. The first set of issues that the book looks at is the issue around cultural, societal, and behavioural change. And it really focuses on the fact that the pandemic has given us all pause for thought. It's made us stop and think what's really important in life, and how we relate to each other and how we relate to our communities and the places that we live. And that came out really strongly in many of the artworks. It also taught us and showed the way in terms of how we focus on social justice and equality issues when we think about well-being, and when we think about how we're going to build back better from the pandemic in the future. And many of the essayists spoke really vocally about the importance of putting equality at the heart of sustainability. And of course, to do that, you have to have public engagement. And there were many exciting ideas there about how to engage the public. And James Poston's essay had a fantastic poster which showed us how to have a Build Back Better Thursday. And the essays also talked about how we build from some of the good sustainable behaviours we've seen under lockdown, so less food waste, active walking, cycling, etc., into the future. And they nearly all talked about and touched on the importance of education for sustainability, not just in terms of how climate change is caused, for example, but what people can do about it. So loads of great ideas there. But one of the really strong themes in all of the works was the fact that individual changes alone will not lead to a sustainable future. To get change at the scale and at the pace we need to see, we need to have structural change, and that involves government, it involves policymakers, and it involves regulators. So Richie Sunak, if you're listening, many of our essays had fantastic ideas about how to build a smart, fair, and green recovery package. So I really hope those shape the Bayes Select Committee inquiry process into this and Richie's speech next week. So read those essays. Many of the essays, as we've heard, have touched on the issue of decentralised decision-making. And again, James mentioned this in his essay already in the little package that we've seen. So giving power, giving funding, giving resources, and giving data to local communities so that they can really shape their own futures. And we're seeing the issue in Leicester when you don't get things like data to do that. The essays also spoke to the importance of moving beyond economic growth, so moving beyond a focus on GDP, to also consider other indicators of well-being. And at Sustainability First, we're producing a paper in the coming weeks on sustainability metrics. And nearly all of them, as you've heard, touched on the issue of tax and welfare reform. Many people were already struggling to make ends meet before COVID, and we specialise as a think tank in essential services and utilities. That was already a problem, and that problem has been turbocharged by the crisis, and so we need more radical measures to address tax and welfare reform. And in the book, we're calling for a citizens' assembly to look at this tricky issue. So the last area that we asked people for ideas on was the issue around business leadership and governance. And the judges fed back that there weren't perhaps as many essays in this area as they'd have liked to have seen. Some of the essays did touch on issues of company purpose and values, and that's absolutely great. And Sustainability First is launching a how-to guide of how to be a purposeful business very shortly. Some of the essays also talked about the issue around how to harness the power of investment for a more sustainable world, and how to really get investors to focus on environmental, social and governance factors. And some also talked about how to take that one step further with the impact investing movement. And Olivia Dixon, one of our judges, who's not on the line today, unfortunately, was very keen on that. Diversity was a massive issue in nearly all of the essays, and clearly the Black Lives Matter has turbocharged some of those discussions. That's absolutely vital at board level, so boards can understand the full range of issues that their companies face, and so that they avoid groupthink and don't all think and come from the same perspective. Flexible and home working in business was another issue, as was the need to get jobs, skills and innovation for the future. And as we've heard from Manjot, he's got some really exciting ideas in that space. So to sum up, I think what we've heard is really borne out what Lord Deben was saying at the beginning. We're not going to get a sustainable world just from our individual changes in our own day-to-day behaviour. We're not going to get a sustainable world and a sustainable future if we just rely on government or if we just rely on business. We need new partnerships which bring all those groups together. And the urgency and the authenticity of all our essay entrants and all the artistic entrants really show the way and show that there are a lot of young and creative people out there who are really keen to see action in this area. So thank you, Claire.
Oh, thank you very much, Sharon. And so now we're going to get on to the announcements of the prizes. Just to warn you, I have made I've had a bit of fun on PowerPoint making some little graphics. So there are a few flashing images that are going to be coming up now. So if flashing images are difficult for you, then look away now and I'll let you know. There are a couple more coming up, so I'll let you know when they're going to be there. So here we go. So Lord Devon, are you there? Can you please join us to announce the essay prize winners? You may be on mute because I can't hear you yet. Hello?
There we are. Now,
Hello.
I'm very pleased now to announce the winners, and I'll do it in a traditional way from the third prize upwards. I want to remind people that the winners of the essay competition were judged by all the judges, and we did it entirely blind. So we didn't know their names or their ages or their sex or their ethnic backgrounds. We knew nothing of that at all. All we had was their essays, and it was a joy to be able to read them. And I don't want anybody to feel that they're being missed out because they're not prize winners, because everybody contributed something. And that's why the book that you're going to be able to have in a fortnight's time is so important, because it brings all those things which might otherwise have been missed to everybody's attention. So starting with the third prize, we gave the third prize to James Poston. His primary research was really worthwhile, and we wanted to congratulate him on taking a different way to approach these issues. And then we had a problem, because there were two very different essays, each of them taking a different perspective. And we felt the only way to solve that problem was to have a joint second prize. Both of them decided to take one aspect of the issue and look at it through a single but very penetrating lens. So I congratulate as joint second prize winner Dylan Gan and Manjot here. Dylan was philosophical and remarkable, and Manjot was practical and specific and very focused. They were very different, but both very much deserve their prize. But the winner for us was somebody who considered the broader conceptual frameworks, that he thought about the near-term and the long-term solutions. And he, above all, led from the present problems to the much wider issues of the future. I say he, we had no idea that it was male rather than female, but the first prize goes to Yash Dewan.
Oh, thank you so much, Lord Devon. That was really wonderful sharing the prize winners. Congratulations to our prize winners. And again, just to reiterate, thank you so much to all of the people that have contributed and to the other shortlisted essay entrants who are on the line, because they've really done a fantastic job and we really appreciated your works. So I'm now going to ask James first, if he might say a few words. James, if you're there, can you come off mute? And I just want to say congratulations. You gave us a really comprehensive view of what needs to be done with original research. And what I wondered is whether you could say something about your idea for the Build Back Better Thursdays.
Sure, thank you very much. Build Back Better Thursdays came out of when I was wondering how we turn the positive lockdown behaviors into long-term habits. And inspired by the Thursday campaign, I thought, well, if we turn that towards sustainability. So the concept is really two main things: be sustainable and be kind. So every Thursday, try and do something which fits into those two things and share it wider in the hope of creating a movement that will sweep the nation. So that was the idea. And thank you to you guys at Sustainability First for an excellent competition. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you so much, James. Thank you for joining us this evening and sharing a few words. Dylan, if you could get ready to join, congratulations. You gave us such a different perspective. It was such a fresh perspective, and we all didn't know quite what to do with the essay because it didn't answer the specific questions of what recommendations you would want to make. But what it did is make us question what we value in society and how we act. And I think that's so important, these messages about promoting empathy and kindness. And I wondered if you could join us and say a little bit about how we can get those messages across more widely.
Of course, thank you. I think the key to answering that question is understanding. First is knowing that the things we care about that are meaningful to us, our capacity to feel joy, love, or dreams, family, hopes, relationships matter to everyone else. There is a fundamental human integrity that we can all value, share, and empathize with. The second is acknowledging, ironically, that we do not live in isolation. We live in the elegant inevitability of being together in relation with everyone else. Who we are, what we consider important, involve people and affect people. This means we're not just here for us, we're here for others. That's really all we have. And we help each other struggle through this complicated life and try to make it as beautiful as possible. It's been an honor, thank you.
Thank you. That was very beautiful, thank you. And Manjot, if you could join us. Congratulations, hello. Your essay, Innovation and Sustainability, was fantastic, and it really drew on your personal experiences in your work. And I wondered if you could tell people briefly about your idea for the Green Ship Innovation Hubs.
Sure. Well, firstly, thank you very much. It's a lovely surprise. I think it was just from personal experience that I saw that there was an appetite from investors and the public for renewable energies. But I think that was always like something missing between intention and action, which I think the innovation hubs can interact with. So I think they can be the force by connecting specific institutions with the right student-led initiatives. So the hubs will provide the appropriate infrastructure and mentorship. And I think this coordination implemented by the government or the Green Ship can push for renewable energies and provide a practical solution, as it's been highlighted.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining this evening, and congratulations. And Yash, our prize winner, well done. The judges were really impressed by your ideas for change. One of the things you talked about is donut economics, and there's going to be quite a few people on the line who have no idea what that is. So I wondered if you can tell us in a nutshell, what is donut economics and how could it be helpful?
Sure. So donut economics, briefly put, sort of emphasizes on balancing economic activity in a Goldilocks zone that lies between a social foundation, below which people are deprived of basic needs, and an ecological ceiling above which we damage, like as Lord Deben pointed out, Earth's life-giving systems. Now, for me as a first-year student, it is a model that when I came across it, it shook the foundation of the economic theory I'd studied. And the model also urges nations to take policy decisions which are, regenerative and distributive by design. It narrates a holistic economic story, one that goes beyond the circular flow of income and acknowledges that the economy is embedded in a greater social and ecological structure. And it is a model that's tailored for the 21st century. And by keeping in mind the rings of the donut, I feel that countries around the world can build from the COVID pandemic towards a more sustainable future.
Oh, thank you so much, and congratulations again.
Thank you so much.
Involved, and we will be doing some more activities over the coming months, so there'll be opportunities to talk more with some of our prize winners and shortlisted essay entrants. So now I'm going to move on to the art prize, and again some more of my silly firework images are going to be coming up, so if you don't like flashing images, please look away for a moment. If I can get them up. And so Jeremy is going to join us again, and he is going to announce the art prize winners.
Okay, here we go. Again, it's in reverse order. And again, as the previous set of judges had a problem, so did we, because it was really difficult to get down to 3. Therefore, we thought we'd spread the love a bit by having some highly commended ones as well. And the first highly commended you've seen already, because it is just one of those brilliant images which I think everyone's going to remember. And that's the image of the moss face mask by Estelle Woolley. And I think it's a really poignant image, which I think could become a kind of meme, because it just expresses the kind of fragility of both human and natural life, but also their interconnections. So Estelle Woolley, highly commended. And then another highly commended was one which I would put my hand up and say I was really going for. I was just really moved by this piece of work. It has a scale which I would love to see in real life, and it has a sense of hope about it as well. And this is a piece of work called The Closer We Are, Cardiff River Groups by Geraint Ross Evans. And these pieces are, I don't know, Claire can tell me, 2 meters at least?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're over 2 meters. We'll ask Geraint in a minute.
And they have this sense of what happens when communities get together in relation to the world and nature. And something, I really like the way they refer back to a kind of altarpiece, to the biotapestry, but also have a, they're not nostalgic, they have a kind of sense of forward looking as well. So great work. Then the third prize is something which just makes COVID so close to everyone's experience, because it depicts COVID as a kind of tragicomic scene. And this is the untitled work by Freya Moffat. And I think that Freya's work is both really poignant about one's personal experience, but in a strange way, it's hopeful in as much as it talks of a kind of sense of wit and resourcefulness and resilience, and we're going to need all of those qualities to face the new world. The second prize was just one which the judges went for, because everyone said there was a kind of freshness and hope and sense of sort of forward-lookingness about this work, and that is the collected work of as Liz Elton, but particularly this piece, which I think is coming up. We've already seen her fantastic collage made out of vegetables, which reminded me of Archamboldo. But this piece just has a sense, not only in its materiality, but just the way that actually the picture's taken, of something which is both projective, but also understanding about the necessity to deal with materials. And then the first prize was just this body of work, which we all looked at, and without even really knowing what it was about, you just think that's really strong work. It's work which the images have a kind of idiosyncratic nature to them, which draws you into it. And then once you're drawn in, you have to respond to it and try to understand what the artist is doing. I think it's great work. And the first prize goes to William Bock, and in particular, The Illegal Dump. And there's something about this which is very disturbing, and boy, do we need to be disturbed. Sustainability is sometimes too comforting a term because it suggests we can sustain, whereas in fact what we're facing is something much more serious in terms of the emergency and the potential sixth extinction. And I think that William's work deals with that, but also has this sense of the kind of power of the earth which we reside in, and that we diminish that power and we misunderstand it at our peril. So William Bock, many congratulations to the other 4, but many congratulations to everyone who put in work. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing The prize winners. And I'm now going to go over and talk to some of them. So I'm going to start with Estelle. Estelle, if you can join, it would be lovely if you could talk a bit about your work. We found this simple, poignant imagery really moving, and we wondered how you came up with the idea and what you were seeking to express with the work.
Hi there. So during lockdown, I've been producing a series of these self-portraits wearing face masks composed of delicate natural materials, and I've been foraging on my daily walks for them, immersing myself in my immediate natural surroundings and gathering plants which sparked some kind of meaning for me. Breathe is the first mask I made at the beginning of lockdown, when I started noticing both the oddness of seeing people wearing these masks, combined with the stillness I felt outdoors. With less transport on the roads and people working from home, less pollution in the air, nature seemed to be thriving. The natural world provides a lot of our medicines and remedies, yet these are far removed from a clinical setting, juxtaposed here with a surgical mask. I made this particular portrait from moss, which is interesting as a plant because it forms a carpet in many woodlands, absorbing water and nutrients, harvesting carbon dioxide and sunlight to produce oxygen. It acts as a natural filter, and the oxygen it produces gives us life so that we can breathe through it. If you're interested to see the rest of the series and other materials I've been foraging, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, or my artist profile on Axis Web. Thanks very much.
Oh, thank you so much and congratulations. And Estelle's work is also going to be featured on the front cover of our book, as you've seen. So thank you so much. And Garan, I wondered if you could join, and we really loved the way that you express this sense of community action, showing people with their local nature, and I'm just so impressed by the way you've brought together, in terms of your imagery, people, activity, places. I wondered if you could talk a bit about your process of working with communities and developing these narrative drawings. And also, as Jeremy said, could you tell us a bit about the scale of the work?
Yeah, hello. Thank you so much. It's so great to be shortlisted, let alone be highly commended as well. Thank you. I think it's about 3.5 meters wide. I'm not sure what tall, but it is very big, yeah. I basically, they were inspired by a community action group called Cardiff Rivers Group, who are based in South Wales and spend a lot of their time in Cardiff Rivers pulling out the rubbish that sadly ends up there. So I volunteered with them, and after a little while I built up the courage to ask if I could just stand still for a little while and do drawings of them. So I observed them. I then distilled that experience in the studio, and what I was trying to convey, I suppose, was the impact individuals can have working collectively, and it's sort of happening across this pictorial space of time, which I think picture making does a very good job of pulling together scales that sometimes as individuals we find it difficult to comprehend together. So yeah, this work really is dedicated to them. And I hope, you know, it empowers people to want to feel a positive part of that story. So yeah, diolch yn fawr iawn, Sustainability First for like helping me bring that message to a wider audience. And congratulations to all the other winners as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for joining tonight. And so Freya, if you're there, please come off mute. And yeah, hello. We found, oh, hello. Hi. We found your work to be curious, comic, disturbing, moving, and it really gets that sense of loneliness and isolation. And I particularly love how the character is holding a phone, and it's kind of been our like lifeline to connect with each other during this time. I wondered what inspired you to create this sculpture?
Well, I was just kind of locked down and feeling very kind of still. And I kind of noticed the mass of stuff that was arriving into our house. So it was kind of doing something with that versus that movement versus our kind of stillness, kind of embodying that, really. So thank you very much. This is fantastic. I feel very honoured.
Oh, well, thank you so much, and thanks for coming and joining us this evening.
Thanks.
And Liz, are you there?
Yes, yes, I'm here. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We thought this was such a dynamic and hopeful image, and that the artwork itself moves with nature, but also the materials that you use are really sensitive to the environment. And I wondered if you could say just a little bit about your process, the materials you use, and what you were trying to express with this work.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you so much. I'm really delighted to be part of this and part of this great group of artists and writers. So, I mean, this is called Hill, this piece of work. I think quite a lot about the potential embedded in waste. I want everything to realise its potential. So Hill is a big painting, and it's made on compostable cornstarch, which is the material used to make food waste recycling bags. And I've coloured it with vegetable dyes from kitchen waste. And I've also embedded seeds from medicinal plants in it. And I really like to use this material to make my paintings, partly because of its resonances with food and with waste, but also because it's very light. So it floats as the air moves around it, which can give a sense of time being suspended and can be quite meditative to watch. And it's shown here in a domestic environment, in a garden. And during lockdown, there was quite a shift for me away from the studio making large works to staying at home. And I was thinking about my own domestic environment, and I started making photographs of my own kitchen waste on its way to compost. So using everyday materials, just what is to hand. And I suppose I think that there is just something quite hopeful in that.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I totally agree. There's something amazing about making something so beautiful from the things that we would otherwise discard. So, and same with Freya. So thank you so much for your contribution. We've really enjoyed looking at your works. And now to William, our prize winner. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for taking part. William, are you there?
I am. Yes.
Oh, great. Hi. Good to see you. This is such an arresting image of the enduring power of nature. With humans as just a fleeting part on this world, leaving our rubbish, and you've really helped to raise awareness of that, and I think the crisis itself has helped us to reflect on our impact. I wondered if you could tell us a bit about your kind of thought process in making this work, and how you've gone about these sort of daily walks in lockdown.
Yeah, again, thank you. I'm blown away really to be part of such an amazing group of artists and writers and creators. So yeah, I was quite shocked to hear that. I got that, but thank you very much. And yeah, it was a real kind of journey to go on, to well, emotional and physical journey. I think the walking, just I walk a lot. It's part of my daily life, and also as an artistic practice and way of engaging with my environment, the land around me. And I just finished a project in West Cork in the south of Ireland, and I found myself here on the coast. So I just was exploring the environment every day, and for me, I suppose I'm interested in a kind of wide-eyed, honest look at what's around us, you know, not a sort of romanticized idea of landscape, but a kind of a lived and present experience of what it is, what's on it, who's living there. And I suppose the image you're seeing of the tip is actually somewhere I go quite often, because I'm fascinated by it, and I find it quite beautiful in a way. It tells so much about the people that, you know, are dumping their stuff you know, the stuff that doesn't quite fit into the sort of neat recycling model of the sort of the climate the answer to, you know, some of the problems with the climate crisis. So it's very complex. I mean, the issue is climate change is incredibly vast and complex, and I'm sort of, my very kind of simple daily walk, which I know a lot of people have been doing throughout lockdown, really kind of grounded my thinking and gave me space to sort of play with the ideas that I've been thinking about and struggling with. So literally with my body, using it, putting it in those locations, making myself feel kind of vulnerable, or kind of, you know, sometimes I found myself in a thicket of long grass, sort of smelling the earth, but kind of through the process of taking the image, it wasn't like I'm going to go and do that. It just came out through that act. So there was a performance element in that.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that experience of lockdown. It's been fascinating to see your works, and many congratulations for being our prize winner. So thank you.
Thank you. So
and yeah, and thank you all for staying on. We're going over a little bit on our time, but I hope that you have enjoyed the opportunity to hear from everybody, and I think it's been really lovely to hear from all our prize winners and from the judges. I think Phil Barton, who is the chair of Sustainability First, is going to say a little bit about what we're going to be doing next and say some thank yous to everybody. So Phil, if you're there.
Thanks, Claire, and I'm actually going to start with the thank yous. Particularly to the judges. I was on both judging panels. You've done a fantastic job, and thank you very much for that. Huge numbers of universities, institutions, individuals all shared the word about these competitions, got it out there, because without any knowledge of it, we wouldn't have had the entries. So thanks to them, and a number of expert contacts from industry of various sorts who provided insights to us. I'd like to thank the team. Claire, you've done a fantastic job, as we've already heard. So too has Amy in pulling it all together, but also Sharon Darcy, who brought the idea of the essay prize to the trustees just as we were starting lockdown in mid-March, and then willingly took on my slightly crazy idea of adding an art prize to it, and who leads our work at Sustainability First so passionately and so well. But my real thank you is to the hundreds of entrants who submitted their work to these prizes. And they provide some really fantastic fertilizer for our work going forward. The ideas are inspiring, they're wide-ranging, they come from all sorts of parts of the country and indeed beyond, and from all sorts of professions. And we're already beginning to feed some of these ideas, for example, into the thinking on the government's pandemic recovery package to try and make sure we do build back better. You've heard about the virtual book, but we're hoping that we'll be able to work with many of you who've taken part in the competition over the coming weeks and months in order to strengthen our work, but hopefully reciprocally, we'll be able to support you in your work and your ideas as you take them forward. Education for sustainability, how to tackle these issues of climate change is absolutely key, and Sustainability First, we're really committed to taking that forward and to building on that. So thank you all for your enthusiasms, for joining in this critical journey with us, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think we were going to cheesily just have a look at everybody, because there's so many people on the line and not everybody's had a chance to speak. So I wondered if David could share our kind of everybody view, and if we could all give a wave. Thank you. Thank you all for joining. And I will just leave you with, we've got a little video to leave you with. So as I said, we weren't able to share everybody's work from the art prize entries, but there were lots of really amazing works that we will hopefully share over the coming weeks. And one of these was Katie Goodwin's work, which really captured a vision of hope, symbolising the community spirit we've been seeing during lockdown. And I want to warn you again, there are some flashing images with this one, so if flashing images are an issue, please switch off now. Yeah, I'm going to leave you with this snippet of the video. And yeah, and her final message: be kind and have hope. So to everybody who's joined us this evening, thank you very much for staying with us, and good night, everybody.